in conversation now. So if you have a question for Father Picardel, please come to the microphone in the middle because we're recording this post on our website.
Father, I am actually sickened by your presentation. I need to go home. It is sickening. My question to you is, what does justice look like to you? Why are these perpetrators, particularly the Philippine National Police, to whom Duterte gave the order? He gave the order. Why don't the bishops go to Malacanang and confront Duterte and say, enough? And get those PNP officers in jail. Make justice look real. The bishops cannot just talk and talk and talk and send out 3 letters, 1 every 3 months. It's just words. But the real question is, what does justice look like for all of us who really cannot live with the reality of death the way it comes to us?
Okay, the first question is, as the bishops reach out to the president, they have. It was composed of his friend, the Archbishop of Davao, Valdez. Cardinal Tagle was there also. And after there were 4 bishops who went to Malacanang to talk with the president, to reach out, to enter into dialogue, and to bring all these concerns. The problem is you cannot dialogue with the president. He does not listen. You can go there every day, but it will have no effect because his mind is already made up. And we have a psychiatrist. This is on the record, but we have the psychiatric report that was actually made during the annulment case. One of the things that stand out is there's no sense of guilt and remorse. What do you call that? A person who lacks sense of remorse and guilt. And that is at the core, that he promised, he said that the killings will not stop. So what can you do? And that is why that you can denounce and denounce, but we do not stop denouncing, even if it will have no effect on them. Because what is important is also how do we awaken the conscience of the people. And the problem is, of course, we can pray for his conversion, or we can pray that the Lord will deliver us from evil, whatever it means. But other than that, it will continue.
Father, it is obvious that the Filipino people have elected a psychopath for president. And I'm sorry. Trying to compose myself.
Take your time.
For president. And I'm sorry. Trying to compose myself.
Take your time.
As a matter of practicality, for defense against a psychopathic president, how do we assure that the people that the church gives protection to are not actually planted by the president to identify the locations where these people are being given shelter?
We are very careful in vetting those who enter our sanctuary program. They go to process. But that is still the risk that you are prepared to take. Even if they know where there's so many, I said that the Catholic Church has so many convents, monasteries, formation houses and everywhere that they cannot guess where, these witnesses are placed. Remember, there's always a time for accounting. No matter how long it will take, but when the time comes, we are ready, we are prepared. Because evil will not reign forever and ever. And we have learned that during the Marcos era, no matter how long it will take. But I hope it is quicker because, can you just imagine? By the end of 2022, that is the end of this term, unless there are changes in the Constitution that will again erase the term limits, this is what they're going to do. By 2022, we have over 72,000 deaths in our hands. That's why there is a pressure in the International Criminal Court to act on the complaint that has been filed. And we know that they are starting to act because even without the case that are being filed yet, that the information is there. The fact that they're willing to accept our witness and to render protection, that is something. He is there in The Hague already. And that is why we are going to send more. Not just the killers, but also the victims, also their loved ones being killed. And that is what we are doing. And that is why that, we have to hope against hope. Let us do what we can. We can continue to denounce. Of course, we know that denouncing is not enough. You have to do something concrete. Make sure, that's why you have to deal. Many of our parishes and our sisters have to deal with local policemen to awaken their conscience, telling them, do not kill, we'll take care of this. That's why one of those policemen who received the 10 Outstanding Young Men Award was a police officer. 0 death. And he cooperated with the parish in this drug rehabilitation program. It can be done. And some of the priests who are running these rehabilitation programs were addicts themselves when they were young. There are 2 of them. They're able to prove that even an addict can reform and can even become a priest. And this is what we're trying to prove, because Duterte, he does not want rehab. It is too expensive. He's not even willing to set aside money for that. And this is where the church comes in. First is, how do we make sure that the killings at least will be lessened? We know it will not stop, but at least it will be lessened. And we're dialogue with other policemen. Policemen also have conscience. The number of policemen going to confession in Baclaran, talking about what they have done, has actually arisen. Of course, I'm not going to break the seal of confession. But, among us priests, when we talk about, we'll talk about, those policemen with conscience. And even, what happened to our top witnesses were former hitmen, very brutal. They told you how they killed. But there's a point when the conscience will hit them, especially when they're ordered to kill pregnant women and a 5-year-old child whom they have become close to. Make it clean, no witnesses. Can I just deliver him to another town, No, it's to be clean. But that's what we are preparing. That there will be some of them that will turn and become witnesses. And some of them have resigned already, or some have applied for schooling.
I have 2 questions. Question number 1 is, you mentioned that there's a second death squad, primarily composed of military, that deals with subversives, so-called subversives. Are they actually targeting Muslim terrorists? I think they call them Moros. And if so, how's that going? That's question number 1. Question number 2 is, this death campaign has been built on the premise, supposedly, of reducing crime at the end, reducing crime. And has it actually happened, aside from these extrajudicial killings? Has crime gone down because of this?
Okay, the first question is,
That deals with subversives, supposedly. Are they actually targeting Muslim terrorists? I think they call them mortals. And if so, how's that going? That's question number one. Question number two is, this death campaign has been built on the premise, supposedly, of reducing crime at the end, reducing crime. And has that actually happened, aside from these extrajudicial killings? Has crime gone down because of this?
okay, the first question. Okay, the first question is, there are no operations of death squad against, it's really an actual, these are combat units going after Muslim terrorists. So that's different. But when I speak about death squads, these are the ones that go after civilians. Well, it's talk about subversive. They're not going after NPA. They're going after what they term as sympathizers, or even some human rights activists, some even journalists, who are a threat to this government. Again, it's during the martial law, these were the targets, criminals, and then the leftists. Actually, I was almost a victim of extrajudicial killing because I was arrested the first anniversary of martial law. I was a student activist. I was tortured and was imprisoned for 7 months. And they put, during the first 1 week of torture, they put a gun into my mouth and popped it. I thought that was they called it at the time salvaging, and they were then doing it for others that they have picked up. So the answer, the second question that you asked is, as the main it brought down that it hasn't, especially murder. Look at Davao, was supposed to be Exhibit A. After over 20 years, they're still drug addicts. Davao is still #1 in murder, #2 in rape. So in terms of dealing with crime, killing is not really a deterrent.
Hi, hello po. My name is Lorena. I am an immigrant from Mindanao as well. And I really appreciate you coming here because I was part of a couple of mission trips through the International Coalition for Human Rights in the Philippines. I am an immigrant from Mindanao as well. And I really appreciate you coming here because I was part of a couple of mission trips through the International Coalition for Human Rights in the Philippines. And we were hearing historically of priests like Father Papsitorio is an Italian Roman Catholic priest who was killed for his support of indigenous people's struggles. So historically, human rights violations have been happening, and it takes a lot of guts to speak up. So I really appreciate you coming here and speaking up about that. I wrote down stuff on my hand. I wanted to ask about the Stop the Killings that you mentioned. I think we here in the United States, especially in Chicago, we're not foreign to police crimes. There's been a lot of black killings here. There's a lot of raids by ICE. And as people of God, that's against what we believe in, where we stand up for giving people shelter when they need it. And can you speak a little bit more about the Stop the Killings that you mentioned? Is it just for the police, or is it also for the military that has been historically being used to harass communities? And you mentioned that there was a question about the role of us here in the United States. I know Trump promised Duterte when he went to the Philippines in November, he promised $152 million of our taxpayers' money, and $2 million of that going to the police. So what can our role be here as people in the United States who have a voice? And third question, I know that there's being organized a national speaking tour that's going to start lobbying in Washington, D.C. in April through the Ecumenical Lobbying Week, I think is what it was, about the Cardin-Rubio bill, which is a bill that's being talked about in the Senate, that was introduced in the Senate to hinder sending U.S. military aid to the Philippines. what are your thoughts on the bill and like the speaking tour that's happening this April?
Okay, the first question.
All I stop the killing is really, it's not just for the police. It's really for those who ignore the due process of the law and ignore the Fifth Commandment. Because it's against God's commandment and against the law. We don't have capital punishment in the Philippines, so there should be no shortcut. And this is addressed because I said earlier on, those are being killed are not just suspected drug addicts or users, but although majority of them are. No. Some are collateral damage, but some also, I said that the other one is the so-called leftists or others, human rights advocates, and even the priest. So we speak about Stop the Killing campaign is, it's really against the culture of death. And to ignore the law. And again, it's against, you stop the authoritarian, the brutal policies. Okay. And to focus on the healing and to address the roots of the problem. About what you can do. Actually, there was last year, that was in July. Remember that the U.S. Congress had approved on the extrajudicial killings in the Philippines. Was that the Tom Lantos?
Tom Lantos Commission.
Tom Lantos, that was a good start. In fact, already they were supposed to ship 20,000 worth of funding for the police. That has been stopped. So those are because right now, on our own in the Philippines, we can do everything that it will have not much impact. We need international support, pressure from outside. That's why even, of course, pressure from Congress, from everywhere, from the UN. And this is where I think it's, in the South African campaign, remember, it was the pressure from outside that forced them to change their policies, and I hope that this is also going to happen in our country, because he controls Congress, he controls the judiciary, he controls the police. Military, yeah, he does, but there are some units he cannot control. So we need the support of not just Filipinos, but others outside are concerned about what is happening.
Thank you, Father. My name is Timothy. And just to follow on to the last question, what are other... Thank you, Father. My name is Timothy. And just to follow on to the last question, what are other governments beside the United States doing in terms of either sanctions on the regime or trying to influence behavior of the regime, or maybe even total support for the regime? So I was wondering if you could maybe give us a view of where perhaps China, the European Union, and just some of the key players.
Yeah, the UN,
A view of where perhaps China, the European Union, and just some of the key players.
Yeah, the UN, United Nations, especially the review, the annual the review of human rights of countries. Actually, there were 50 nations, including the U.S., who expressed concern about the killings in the country. There are 3 recommendations: stop the killing, and then investigation, and to hold those responsible accountable. It was a UN body. The EU, European Union, also came out, with their own position against this killing. So there is now, especially the pressure on the ICC to act on that information, because it is very crucial. The investigation, because other nations can just express concern, condemn killings, but there has to be an action from the International Criminal Court, crimes against humanity, that will hold him accountable.
Father, thank you very much for your enlightening and, if so, shocking presentation. One thing about the issue is it is well covered. It's certainly well covered in the American press. And I suspect it's well covered elsewhere, so at least people know about it, and this will help build up some pressure. But my question is this. One of the things we hear is that Duterte, not too long ago, had 90% plus approval ratings. He's still in the 70s. Now this suggests that a lot of people are in favor of this policy and that there's a lot of public support for it. Could you comment on this, how this happens to be, and what's the solution? Perhaps this is a bigger problem than Duterte himself.
Okay, first, surveys can be manipulated. This is statistics. If the question is, do you support the war on drugs? Of course, everybody support the war on drugs. This is very high. Do you support the killings? 80% says no. You want to prepare them to keep alive. So you speak about the killings themselves. There is little support for that. Of course, the trust ratings is still high. But you know what is our concern? And this was already expressed by the bishop. So there are a lot of Filipinos who continue to support the killings, or not the killings, but the policy that links war on drugs and the killings. And you know, it's still about how, you know, we are 82% Catholics, and you add, you know, 90%, more than 90% Christians. But you have to ask the question: how come that in a predominantly Catholic country, where 7 million will attend the Mass of the Pope, where 10 million attend that procession of the Nazareno, how is it possible that this is happening? It's all about the question of the link between religion and morality. You can attend Mass, you can attend those processions, but the basic teachings of the Church, how we live our lives, the respect for human dignity, respect for human rights, there is a disconnect. And that is why that one of the important tasks of a prophetic community is, how do we form the conscience of the people? And how, so this is one of the, you know, this is troubling for me, because before the elections, majority of the priests in Mindanao supported Duterte. How is it possible for priests who heard about these killings in Davao will support? Of course, they were regionalistic. You are from Mindanao, then you support a candidate from Mindanao. That's another explanation. Or probably, again, the whole idea of the populist temptations, looking for a strong leader, a messiah, that will solve our problems. And even if it involves shortcut, even if it involves violation of human rights.
Magandang gabi po, Father. Thank you for showing us. Magandang gabi po, Father. Thank you for showing us the act of hope and courage. Last Sunday we had Paring Burke, and he gave us the same message, that we might be on the stage of darkness, but we always have to look for the new light of the dawn. So to heed your call to continue the pressure, I would like to plug my organization, the Filipino-American Human Rights Alliance, and if any one of you would be interested to participate in passing the Senate 1055, which will prevent the U.S. sending military aid to the Philippines, and that's one. And also to make sure that all funding that will go to the Philippines will have to follow specific human rights report. So that would be good. So approach me after this meeting, and we can help. We are still doing this raising of awareness. My question is, after we reach the season of conscientization, do you see the season of revenge to come? The season of conscientization, do you see the season of revenge to come?
You know, that is something that we cannot predict, you know. Of course, we always teach that people do not, follow the path of revenge. But you know, a lot of the people, especially the poor who are grieving, are also angry. And it is a very dangerous mix, because victims, you know, often claim the right to strike back. That is why this is the role of the church, to make sure that the whole process is peaceful, to avoid a violent counteraction, you know, a violent response. So always follow the path of peace, the path of non-violence.
Magandang gabi po. Ako po si Maya. And thank you again for this wonderful talk today. I'm part of the Chicago Committee for Human Rights in the Philippines, as well as a youth organizer for the Fellowship for Filipino Migrants. Chicago Committee for Human Rights in the Philippines, as well as a youth organizer for the Fellowship for Filipino Migrants. And I really want to commend you for coming out today and speaking up against the human rights violations happening in the Philippines. When we brought human rights leaders from Karapatan, peace consultants, and indigenous leaders from the Philippines in the summertime, we were really worried about them going back home, because we understood the gravity of speaking out and how that can mean really that you're sacrificing your life because the government might take it. And so, you know, I also want to uplift the name of Father Duterte'S, who was a priest who was killed in Luzon by masked men who are assumed to be agents of the government, because he was a human rights activist. And I wanted to also bring light to the fact that I believe just last year that the Commission for Human Rights in the Philippines was, the budget was decreased to about, I think, was it like $20 US. And that, to me, really shows that Duterte's regime has no concern for human rights, right? And even just this past ASEAN, which was celebrated as though it was a huge holiday in the Philippines, which in reality meant that Trump was having backdoor talks with Duterte, and not once did he bring up the 13,000 people killed in the drug war. And I wanted to hear kind of what your response is on these very blatant attacks, these very blatant taking away of funds or disregard for human rights, both of Trump and Duterte. Funds or disregard for human rights, both of Trump and Duterte.
Well, you know, knowing Duterte, I am not surprised, because he will try everything to go after you. That is already expected. About Trump, well, you know, are they so brothers, or but at least Trump has not resorted to that squad, but we can never tell. But you know, he will try everything. You know, like the recent one on Rappler, because he controls all the members of government, you know, to go after you. So that is expected. Once you begin to speak out, we'll always remember that it's never safe. In Davao, there was a newsman, June Pala. Every morning he'd say, "Welcome to Davao," you know, the city of the killing fields and everything, and he probably got so mad. And we believe that he was killed in the orders of Duterte. It was only when Matabato and Las Cañas came out, you know, and they confirmed what we already knew beforehand. That they were the ones that were really doing the operations. So this is always the danger. In a society that is authoritarian, that is bloody, you know, you expect that if you stand out, you're going to risk your life. And this is what I'm trying to, you know, I've been risking my life ever since, but so far I've been lucky. You know. But I'm not complacent. I no longer run and walk to my work office. It's 8 kilometers. I used to run or walk, but now I have the motorbike and I vary my schedule. I usually get information from DPDN, higher circle, telling me what is the level of threat for me this week. But that's part of being prophetic. Be prepared to lay down your life.
Hi, I'm Julian. I'm with Confronting Chicago. I just wanted to thank you for talking about these religious aspect and all of this, the organizing that's going on within the religious community. And I was wondering if you could maybe elaborate on what the religious community is doing now, especially in. I'm Julian. I'm with Confronting Chicago, and just wanted to thank you for talking about these religious aspect and all of this, and the organizing that's going on within the religious community. And I was wondering if you could maybe elaborate on what the religious community is doing now, especially in response to some of the attacks by the Philippine National Police and Armed Forces of the Philippines against other religious leaders, and maybe if there are any interfaith organizing that's happening currently, if you could possibly expand on that.
Yeah, this is happening.
Organizing that's happening currently, if you could possibly expand on that.
Yeah, this is happening because when we advocate peace and human rights, it's not just Catholics. We always work with other, because it is not a problem of Catholics alone. There is always collaborations with other faith communities and faith groups, and that is why that if you have all these rallies, for example, even it's organized by the CBCP, but you get also others coming from other churches, and there are groups like Rise Up, for example. The Rise Up is actually an ecumenical group, Catholics, Protestants, and other, where there are various groups that are sprouting. So this is not a one denominational approach. It's always, speak about the ecumenism of praxis. That has always been, even during the martial law. That you cannot go on it alone. You have to work and collaborate with others. And so when you speak about ecumenism, it's not just inter-religious dialogue. It is inter-religious practice, working together for peace, for the defense of human rights, for the ecology, for the environment.
Hi. My question is a little bit personal, but my question is, what advice do you have for outreach, particularly in reaching out to people who support Duterte, particularly when they are a family member?
That is always difficult, because even within my own family, there are some who are, we call it DDS, I are the Duterte supporter. Yeah. But the question is, you have to go back to the basics. Suppose I am an addict, and I'm on the list. How would you react? If I am killed, are you going to... You have to be personally also, And you have to let them look at, these are not just numbers, these are people. Either you are, your son has been led astray, use of drugs. But you do not, it's not a question of whether you support Duterte or not. It is a question of, whether is it right to kill a person because he is either an addict or because he's against the government. And it has not even taken up. I'm trying to go back to the basic moral issues about is it really right to kill someone because they're addicted to drugs? If he is your brother or sister, what are you going to do? And that is where I think it's so important.
Okay, I think this is going to be the last question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Father, for coming to Chicago. My name is Joseph Carriosa, and the Journal Globalist. I read your blog that in trying to get the attention of the Duterte government, you you run around the Philippines and you bike. Now, since you want to have an international attention on this, do you want to extend your running around the world instead of just the Philippines? Thank you very much.
You know, my last adventure was, I actually biked around the Philippines. That was in 2008, Davao, Paribat to the 5,000 kilometers. It was biking and preaching about the gospel of life and peace. And the last one was when I was 2011, I was assigned to Manila. Instead of riding the plane, I said, better run walk from Davao, Manila, and into Again, is for a cause. Right now, I don't have intention of running around the world. I have myocardial ischemia and atherosclerosis, so I have. Well, I can still walk. I walked the Camino recently from French Pyrenees to Santiago de Compostela, 100 kilometers. But I will be, when I go back, I will be biking for life and peace from Manila across Bicol, Samar, Leyte, Mindanao, and then to my hermitage. That will be my last. But I used to bike 200 kilometers a day, but now I'm older. I'm 64 years old, and I have some heart conditions. It will be 100 kilometers a day, but still be preaching. About number one is to stop at healing, start the healing. Number two is no to martial law. And number three is resume the peace process between the MDF and the government. That will be my cry. And I will be biking alone, although some will join me part of the way, but I've just been doing that on my own. But that's all I can do, to bike and to preach about it. And in my own little way, to draw attention to these issues of concern.
My name is Joseph Gelariosa of the Journal of Confronting. I'm here at DePaul University. I listened to the talk of Father Picardal. Can you tell me your experience today here at DePaul in your presentation?
Well, I'm very happy at the response. People not just listening, but especially during the open forum. I was expecting baka there could be even hecklers, but there was none. And I saw that most of the people were touched by what I presented. So it's a very positive experience for me to be here. Sometimes we expect that in a forum like this will be others who just active, but it was none.
So you believe that you were able to accomplish your expectations?
Of course, yeah. To be able to present this happening and what are the things that the church is doing. Not just about criticizing, but also about what are the positive things that is being offered.
You mentioned in your blog you're going to speak at Columbia and also at Seton Hall.
Yeah.
When did you speak there already, or you're still going
I'm going there, February 5 at Seton Hall University, and February 6 sa Columbia University.
You mentioned this is your second time in Chicago?
Yeah, I was in 1989 when I was studying in Berkeley. I came up for the Christmas break.
I was there at the event of Arenberg Alejo, and I will be asking you the same question.
Okay.
Don't you think it is kind of dangerous for you, or having this kind of advocacy against the powerful Philippine President Duterte?
I would say it's risky. There's always a risk. Okay. And I'm aware of the risk because I'm used to this. During the martial law regime, I've suffered a lot. I've been tortured. I've been in prison for 7 months. And it's also the same. I'm prepared for anything. So I'm not afraid of anything. What is important is to speak truth to power. To be able to denounce, continue to proclaim the value of human rights.
Okay, and then the other thing can you cite a difference between advocating in the U.S. and outside the Philippines and here in the U.S.? Is there any differences?
Of course, there's always a difference because we are there in the Philippines and we're where everything is happening. And it's more risky there. Here you're safe. At the same time, you have different roles. I think your role is really to lobby. And that's what is already being done. To lobby representatives, to lobby Congress, especially that the Philippines is still dependent on foreign aid from the U.S.
Senator Trillanes will be coming here February 8th. I don't know. I'm not sure why he is coming, but there is an invitation for the media. So, do you think is he able to send this message to the president?
You know, Trillanes is known as a person who is really honest, no matter how much maligned he is. He's a man of principle, he's courageous, and that he's not afraid. And I think he's a very good man, he can be trusted, although a lot of the supporters of the president try very much to malign foreign leaders. I believe in him. He's a good man, and he's courageous, and he's risking his life also.
Have you met Mayor or President Duterte?
Oh yeah, no, before. In Davao.
What can you say about him when you met him? What was your impression?
That was 2000 and before ERAP was ousted. And I invited him to attend rally civic that he was busy. And that he said that, ERAP has not learned a lesson from Marcos. You do not attack the church. That's what he said. I don't know anything like that, but I think.
Is there a difference now? During the time of ERAP, that was about 2000. Now that he is now a president, do you think there's a change in his attitude towards the church?
There seems to be, but I think he's trying to test out how strong the church is. That's why he criticizes the church's spiritual. It was just an individual priest of, in the case of sexual abuse. And that's how he is trying to test out the church. He believes probably the church is powerless. But I don't know, but I think he has to learn. He has to, again, I don't know the numbers what he said to me. Should never underestimate.
Do you have any message to the Philippine-American community?
You know, it's so important to be aware of what is happening in our country. The darkness that has enveloped our country, and to speak out. It's important, to listen to our conscience, what is right and what is wrong. And killing is not right. It cannot be justified, even if you think those who kill them.
Those are not killed, no ifs, no buts.
Yeah.
But in the presentation of Father Alejo last Sunday, he mentioned several priests who are supporting the policy of President Duterte. What can you say about that?
Well, I know that for a fact that before there were some priests who supported Duterte, but right now, some of them have actually changed their minds. I know some of them. And even within our community before, some of them voted for Duterte, but now they're really voting against him. And of course, he has advisors or former priests. But it's different before the elections and what has happened. Because I know a lot of priests really changed their perspective.
Do you think President Duterte already changed his perspective since your meeting with him in 2000?
Maybe, I'm not sure. Yeah, but I'm not sure really.
You haven't met him again?
No, not personally.
Okay, thank you very much. Unless you want to say something else.
That's all.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, and God bless to your advocacy, Father Picarda. This is Joseph Lariosa.